In moments, we'll be joined by one of the most powerful Republicans in the Senate. Senator Jeff Sessions is here. He says Congress has an historic duty to stop the president from exceeding his authority. But we begin tonight with Chris Stirewalt, who's our Fox News digital politics editor. And what I see here that you and I discussed as it happened, that time and this, with Obamacare and now, is an executive who misled, or at a minimum grossly misstated things, and refuses to be held to account. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. The only reason he came out and had to acknowledge that he misled on that is because he was caught dead to rights. And even when he was caught dead to rights, and we've been jumping up and down about it here on Fox News, he blew it off. And it finally got to the point where he came out and he said, what I said all along was you could keep your plan if it meant certain minimum standards. And people were ready to let him get away with that. Not us. We kept pressing. We said, that's insane. That's not at all what he said. And ultimately, he was forced, once the mainstream media also jumped on it, to admit the truth that he had said wrong things to be charitable. And the same thing is happening now. 25 times on camera saying, I don't have the legal authority. He comes out last night and says, I have the legal authority. No explanation other than some paper statement from some liberal law professors. And we're supposed to just say, okay.
Well, the question is, does he even care what we or anybody else really says about that? Because if we look at it through, I love the construct you have there, because essentially what you have in the 2012 election then is a taking up by false pretenses. The president, on the central issue of his first term, misled and continued to knowingly mislead throughout the election, obtains a second term in office, gets in, and then says, psych, sorry, it really wasn't that way, you got me. Then he says, I cannot do what you want me to do. I cannot do what my supporters say that I should do, which is to circumvent Congress, ignore the constitutional role that's laid out for the chief executive, and even describes it in fairly eloquent terms. Says, I can't do that. Then we get past another election, and what does he do? He does exactly the thing that he said he wouldn't do. So that's two elections in a row. Before the election, we say one thing. After the election, we say another thing. And in each time, what he's saying is, the thing I said before, not true, not germane anymore, because I'm tired of waiting. So here we go.
How is anybody supposed to believe him? How are we supposed to believe anything he tells us from this point forward?
Well, maybe it doesn't matter to him. I'm not sure. I listened to what he said last night. I've been through, I've read the president, I've read the legal brief from the Department of Justice. I've gone through, I've looked for some rationale, but there's no rationale beyond this, which is, if the Congress doesn't act in a time frame that the chief executive thinks is appropriate and he gets impatient, he's allowed to legislate for them. That's new. And what I can gather out of all of this is that the president has decided that the last 2 years of his term are going to be a disaster, this hot mess of a closing
of his
8 years in office.
Before we get to that, doesn't character matter? Doesn't integrity matter? Honesty? I realize politicians have to spin, and that's how, I mean, you can't become president if you're not going to be a spinner. But this is a matter of integrity. 25 times on camera, either the president was knowingly misstating things for political reasons. He knew he could do it, but he wanted to stave off these folks who were pressuring him, so he just said he couldn't. Or he's done a complete 180 on his actual beliefs and just refuses to acknowledge that to the American people. Doesn't that matter?
Well, look, we've had a lot of people talking about, Republicans have been talking about president as a king, the president thinks he's a monarch, the president thinks he's an emperor. If you look at the way our framers and our founders embedded the presidency into our civic culture, the president in many ways has more power than a monarch in a parliamentary society. Our president has enormous authority. He has, in the nuclear era, the power to destroy the whole world. That is how much authority and how much power our system puts on the president. The check on the president is twofold. One, what can the Congress do to him? But two, what does he as a man, what is his integrity, and how is he bound to tradition and to everything else? If he doesn't care about that second part, there's very little to constrain the man.
That's right. That's right. I mean, your word has to be worth something. And when you go back on it, you have to offer an explanation. I think the American people will listen. But nothing's being said, and a paper statement from the DOJ and some left-wing law professors isn't going to get it done. Chris, good to see you.